Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We provide fan-oriented and analytic discussions on a variety of animated shows, movies, and anime, currently featuring Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, Star Wars Rebels, Moonbeam City, Ruby, and Adventure Time. I am Dylan Hysen, and today I'll be taking you solo through the latest episode of Star Wars Rebels, Wings of the Master. Fifth episode, of the second season of Star Wars Rebels, if you do not include Siege of Lothal. I cover Star Wars Rebels every single week here on the Overly Animated Podcast. You can learn more about us at overlyanimated.com, and we cover all the other shows I mentioned in the beginning. Let me get right into this latest episode of Star Wars Rebels, Wings of the Master. Finally, we have our Hera episode that I have been craving. That is the top story for me from this episode. Our least developed main character, Hera, is finally somewhat of a person. Before, all we knew is that she's the pilot, she's the captain of the ship, and we knew she had a thing going with Kanan, and now we know not so much more about her. To be fair, all we really learn is that she can fly, and she likes flying, and she likes doing things for people. But that's okay. That's for this show. That's a lot, and I just love the sequences with her, especially this one sequence in this episode of her flying the Blade Wing for the first time. It is a brilliant sequence. One of my favorites on the show. Overall, this episode, I think, is the most successful of the season so far. It's not incredible. Let me not get ahead of myself. It's not the best ever. It exemplifies one big flaw of the show for me, which I'll talk about. But overall, I do really like this one. I think it features all the characters pretty well. It focuses in on the least developed character of the show. And I think it features the new rebellion dynamics, potentially the best the season has done so far. For me, it made the most sense here. We had, everyone, I guess we didn't have Ashoka, but we had Rex doing things. We had Sato there, and it all kind of clicked for me, the minor roles that these guys would be playing more so than before. I'd kind of been hoping for a while now that we would continue to focus on our crew of the Ghost rather than bring in Ashoka, Rex, and Commander Sato, among others. Like, we have a new character introduced here. I like that how this episode handles these new secondary characters more so than any other episode this season, because they really are relegated to roles that advance the plot, roles of minorly interacting with our main crew, but we keep our main crew, which is important to me, because if the show is not about the crew of the Ghost, then what is it about? It's ostensibly about the initial formation of the rebellion, right? But it's not something that is sustainable, because they're really limited to just the very beginnings of this rebellion. I mean, when we enter, Dave Filoni, co-executive producer, talked about this in an interview recently with EW, and when we enter the original trilogy of Star Wars movies, they have just won their first major battle, so they're not going to get enough plot traction just focusing on this rebellion. What we need is a character-driven show, which is a show always has been. It's just been a character-driven show about the crew of the Ghost. I don't think this really is just a personal preference. I think it's a necessity because of the limitations that they're under, and I don't know if I need to argue that every single week, but and that's what we get here exemplified, is a great character-driven episode. Let's talk Hera. I have some complaints. Unsurprisingly, they revolve around Agent Gallus, but I want to get the positives with Hera first. Like I said earlier, this sequence with Hera flying the Blade Wing for the first time. Oh my goodness, what a great cinematic character moment. And then her. It's not just this. Okay, I don't just mean her flying it first time. I mean that plus her explaining it to this new character, Quarry. I don't know. That's her speech there is the best moment her character has had on the show for sure. It's really great. And she says, they mentioned, I didn't quite catch the planet that they mentioned in the beginning, but I'm sure that was a known entity already. She was a girl when the Clone War, we get her backstory, that she was a girl when the Clone War came. She dreamt of flying when she saw Republic ships above. She left her family so that she could fly, and she chose to use her ability to help others most in need, kind of a recurring thing in the show and something I'll criticize later. And she felt a need to be up there. And she says, kind of, I guess, the most poetic line of describing this concept. Even when I'm up there and things are at their worst, I'm at my best. She says she thrives in the chaos of the skies and space, and I think it comes across kind of beautifully here. For the first time, I really believe that Hera is a person. I mean, this is a nuanced portrayal, even if it's kind of even if it's only expanding in cursory depth a stereotype of the character that she is the pilot. She loves flying. I feel one with the skies. Even if that's all it is, which really it is all it is. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. This isn't some crazy nuanced portrayal. Even if that's all it is, I still love it because this is a character who I want to love, and I'm going to latch on to whatever I can get from it. I think she is everything about Hera, I think so far has been kind of a really sympathetic portrayal. So what that leads to is to your audience kind of mostly accepting what you're going to throw at them later involving that character. I think sympathetic character portrayals can go a long way. So yeah, I mean, that's really the main thing with this episode for me. I'm not sure how much depth I can talk about it in. I love Hera's dynamic with Quarry at the end. I love how she kind of it's the typical thing. It's like, I'm waiting for someone to fly. I've waited a long time for the right pilot. I can wait longer. Okay, the show has no one claimed that this show had incredible dialogue, but it's not bad dialogue. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it has kind of stereotypical dialogue a lot. So we have that whole thing with, I'm waiting for you to be you're the one that's going to impress me. I don't think so. We could have, they could have gone a few directions with this. They could have gone, I ain't waiting for no female to fly my new ship, right? They could have gone that direction. Like totally a Katara in the season 1 finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender. They totally could have done that. But I don't know how that works in Star Wars. I don't know. There's like so many races and stuff. I'm not sure what gender dynamics are among them. So maybe that's a little sketch there. But, so why is he skeptical of her in the first place? Just because he's skeptical of everyone, right? I guess that's what's coming off. It's not a super satisfying thing. Like, he's just going to be skeptical of anyone that comes along. Why is she special? So she kind of has to prove that she's special to him, which she does by talking about why she loves flying, even though he's not a pilot. So why would he be able to relate to that? I guess her passion got through to him regardless. That's kind of what we're going for. But, no, not really. No buts. It was, I think it was successful. It didn't go too deep. And I think that what they did with it was good. At the end, she is promoted to the captain of the entire Phoenix unit, which is a thing, apparently. I mean, we know Phoenix unit's a thing or whatever. I don't know if it's a unit. Commander Sato says, our fighter pilots will benefit greatly with your expertise. And it was from the suggestion of Kanan, so that's good. It's Phoenix Squadron. Excuse me for this very nuanced difference. And this isn't a super satisfying distinction for us as the audience, because Phoenix Squadron doesn't really mean anything to us. I mean, I know it means something. It's the thing we've been seeing the whole time, but what is her... in terms of the dynamics that we'll see within the show, I don't think this is going to make a difference, because the only characters we care about, Hera already was the captain of. She's going to be now the captain of other randos in the background who we don't care about. So that's the difference. So it's not a super satisfying thing that we're going to see play out in the rest of the season. But in terms of this episode, it was a nice little thing at the end, I think it worked. Something else, the other thing I really loved about this episode, so we had Hera's portrayal. I loved the climactic fight. I think the ultimate, trying to get through the blockade. and it's Hera coming in. I cared about, Hera showing up with the ship on top of the other ship. That worked. Released they couldn't have hyperdrived on its own, so they piggybacked it onto the other one with the hyperdrive. I mean, that's pretty cool. And then they release it, and it fires that awesome laser thing. That I think that works. I think it's really a kind of a satisfying thing to the end of this episode, and I think to the credit of the previous things that happened in the episode, it built up in a way in which you would care about it. Also, something I haven't mentioned, I've talked about before this, I'm not super caught on to the mythology. The Blade Wing, being something I assume that is built up to be featured in the into the original trilogy, right? Yeah, looking at some details now. That's the typing you heard, and so that's pretty cool that we saw the origins of it, and we're going to see the continued manufacturing of this rebel ship, which is going to be, I guess, an iconic ship for the Rebel Alliance, which we eventually see. So I think that adds a lot of new meaning to it, and I did kind of understand that as I was watching, even if I didn't immediately. I think even if you're I think the episode does a good enough job of, even if you're not sure right away that this is a thing, the show has done things like this before. It's it can lead on to, this is a thing that's going to be, that it leads up to something that we've already seen, even if you don't necessarily remember that immediately, because they do the thing with, we'll continue to produce it at the end with this guy and he'll lead the production. Yeah, anyway, I don't know how much sense that made, but in general, I think the show does do a good job with incorporating just the many mythology elements it has thrown at it. Potentially the one exception being the Clone Wars mythology elements, but I did like how the Clone Wars elements were handled this episode at the very least. So yeah, I really liked the kind of the climactic thing at the end, and I think it really worked. Fight scenes on the show, especially ones in space, in the past have been a little chaotic, a little nonsensical, and a little boring. I didn't really think that was the case here, so props to it. In the future, I'd recommend less space fights. I think that they don't come across incredibly well on the show for whatever reason. I feel like the most successful fight sequences to me have always been the ones with, lightsaber battles with Inquisitors and stuff like that. To me, those kind of showcase the medium of how they portray Star Wars Rebels within this animation medium, and also within just this animation style, which is a little weird, the animation style that they have. Okay, so what didn't I like about this episode? Because I didn't think it was the greatest. I wouldn't rank this in the top tier of episodes for the show, which I don't think season 2 has achieved yet, which is a little worrying. I haven't seen an episode yet in season 2, which I've been blown away with, and I kind of want that. So this episode it exemplifies a huge, I don't think exemplifies the right word, a huge kind of problem the show has in portraying in portraying good and evil. There's never shades of gray on the show, and it's a little tiring. The evil empire, once again, it's definitely tiring. The rebels are good, the empire is bad. Why are people good and bad? And it'd be fine if there's clear good and bad if the bad guys had interesting motivations, but they kind of just don't. Here's the biggest example. Agent Callus. Here's an actual line from Agent Callus this episode, which I will read to you, and it's something that was actually said on the show. He says, "They'll return. They can't help resisting people in need, which is the last mistake they'll make." It's not good when you have kind of laughable dialogue on the show. I don't know if everyone agrees with this is laughable dialogue, but really, they can't help resisting people in need, which is the last mistake they'll make. Is the world so black and white that you have one group that is just focused on helping people and the other group knows it and just doesn't care? Sometimes yes, sometimes honestly that is how things work, but it's not interesting. And Agent Callus is not interesting, and I've complained about Agent Callus every single podcast that he's been on, for a podcast covering an episode that he's been on, and he kind of takes on this kind of funny dynamic. Like, he's not threatening. He's clearly not a threatening character. And so whenever he says something that's kind of supposed to be really evil, it's just kind of funny, which I think is a little intentional with him. Like, I think the show knows what it's doing with him, but it either miscalculates or it just doesn't care when it just keeps him at the forefront of the villain force. Because, like, he kind of has to be intimidating here, right? And he's not intimidating. He's never intimidating. He's just funny. So I don't like this choice to feature him here. Especially with this question. But like, I mean, and so the other aspect of this no shades of gray argument is part of Hera's backstory, which we finally see, is that, you know, she's like, I just need to help people, and like, that was my true calling. It's like the skies and helping people. And this is such a kind of bland character motivation. It's also, so there's two aspects. It's not nuanced. Like, why do you like helping people? I understand that's, you're good, you're a force of good, and so you want to do good things, but why? It goes into no details. And the other problem is that this has been claimed by Ezra. This character motivation was clearly claimed. You know, Ezra already has this dumb, simple motivation, and he is a child, so that it works for him. But you are a nuanced adult who is an interesting character, and I think you want something more interesting than, I just like helping people. This was exemplified in Path of the Jedi, which is actually my favorite episode of the show. There, Ezra kind of realizes that his drive, his ultimate character motivation should be to help others, and it's, on the surface, that's, like I just said, a really bland motivation. However, with Ezra, it's built up in a really successful way, because we see Ezra not caring about others, and then we see the kind of like how the crew of the Ghost influences him, and him realizing that he does want to care about others. So, like, that really works with that character, not just because he needs a simpler motivation because he's like a teenager or a child. Like, that was kind of a joke, but we saw a great build up there. With Hera, she hasn't been featured at all, so giving her that motivation too is not as successful at all. So between making that Hera's motivation and having Agent Callus just say that super silly line, it has never been more clear that the show is in need of nuanced morals for its characters. I think this is very clear, because you're already working from a place when you start the show of here are the good guys, here are the bad guys. Like, we already know who's good and who's bad, and the entire point of the show, in terms of within the larger Star Wars mythology, is building up the origin of the good guys. So, you know, it's uninteresting to say, oh, the good guys are good. It was more interesting with Ezra because we saw him not good, but we always saw these guys being good. So I really just think we need more nuanced portrayals of morality with everyone involved in the show. It would make for a lot more interesting dynamics. And that's a big complaint, I think. I think it's kind of a big problem. So like, as much as I loved the Hera portrayal, it still was kind of, it was only good as the show can be good. And so it can't supersede the problems of the show, which is this no nuanced morality. So, you know, like I said, I'm pretty positive overall, because we finally got this Hera episode, and I thought this episode really had its moments. But, and I guess I want to say now that I think the thing that stood out more to me than the initial Hera flight, even though I said that in the beginning, was Hera stating Hera's speech, and then the climactic fight scene. I think those are the ones I liked more. But in her initial flight was also okay. Other aspects of this episode, I thought Quarry was an okay character. I thought that was fine. The concept of this kind of tricky landing planet, I think, is pretty good. No idea if it was a thing or not before this. Shantipo, is the planet I am referring to. What else we got here? We had stuff with Kanan, which Kanan's actions were kind of ambiguous, but they were only like small scenes, so it's fine. But yeah, it didn't really make sense what he was doing, I think. What else do we got? We had the one thing I did like with Callus was that it's like, oh, it's this crew of the Ghost again. Commander, focus all fire on the Ghost. Like, I like that at this point Callus has enough encounters with them that he's like, of course, it's that ship. You know, like, I like that dynamic of the familiarity with the heroes and him just being a recurring villainous force. So that aspect of his character is good. It's just, if he like had one of the Inquisitors there with him, I think that might have been a better choice, but I don't know. I assume we will see the Inquisitors again very soon. I think I've covered kind of everything here. It wasn't the most complex episode. There are kind of three fronts though, so there was a little bit to keep track of. An argument might be that we didn't really need the Kanan front. We could have just spent more time with Hera. Like, you need to folk check in on Callus twice, but maybe we're jumping too much between scenes on the show. And yeah, so I think that covers things here. So overall, I think that this is the best episode of Rebels this season. I don't know if people would agree with that, but I liked it the best. Next week, it looks like we're getting a Sabine-focused episode. Of course, the preview is to be believed from last week, which makes me very excited because that's the other character of the show that I don't think is a character. And I very much want to really like Sabine. We had a few Sabine things here. It's like, oh, the weapons, and she, like, you asked whatever race that she's supposed to be to not focus on weapons, yeah. And they have that going. So that's kind of a continued thing with her. Her portrayal is always like, okay, she's a mechanic, she likes weapons, you know. It's so I would like more nuance with her character as well, which hopefully we're getting. So yeah, I'm happy with this episode. I'm starting to be a little weary that we're not gonna hit highs this season because this season has a clear distinction. Greg Weisman has left the show, so maybe without Weisman, we're not getting as nuanced scripts and writing in general, and I am worrying about that. You know, it's been 5 episodes now. Where's my standout episode? So we'll see. You know, maybe it'll come later. There are 22 or something this season. There's a lot of chances. You know, and I'm not at a point where I just like stop watching the show. Like, I'm satisfied enough with the show. So yeah, let me know if you agree with my assessments of this episode and the show in general. I'm Dylan Hysen, and you could write to me at dylanova.tumblr.com, or maybe you want to email the podcast at overlyanimated.com, and the website where you can find all of these forms of contact is overlyanimated.com, including new blogs that me and hopefully other co-hosts are writing. Nothing on Rebels yet, but I potentially might write a post on this show. We'll see. You can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons: Shayna, Mitch, Cordell, Beatrice, Nate, Andy, and Jamie, aka Hannah, Fever, Mitch, Cordell, University, Beatrix, Strange, Buzz Lightyear, and Mailman. So I'll be back next week, presumably solo casting in. It looks like I've been for the long haul on solo casting this show. Blood Sisters, so Sabine's sister. Ooh, that would be interesting. So yeah, next podcast is Moonbeam City, either tonight or tomorrow, and then we have Ruby on Sunday, and we repeat the cycle again with Gravity Falls coming back at some point. So yeah. And of course, we are now covering Adventure Time and new episodes of Adventure Time all of next week, so that's big. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I will see you next week for more Star Wars Rebels. Bye.